Hello, welcome to this series of 14 tutorial videos on the charts of rock and roll musicians. This is the first part in the series. I'm going to explain how I conducted this study and how I found these charts. These are the musicians whose charts we're going to analyze: Aretha Franklin, Bob Dylan, Jim Morrison, etc. You probably recognize most of these names. These are people who've had a huge impact on rock and roll music. Contemporary pop or rock music, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to be analyzing their charts using a system that we call vibrational astrology. In vibrational astrology, one of the important things that we interpret are harmonic charts. If you're not familiar with harmonic charts, I have a series of a few videos that describe how to interpret harmonic charts. You might want to watch that first. If you have an idea of what harmonic charts are, you're fine and you can proceed. Okay, so in this introduction, let me explain how I found this data and why I'm using these charts and why this study is more sophisticated than just anecdotal evidence. Okay, so what are we doing here? We're looking at movers and shakers in early rock and roll. And what we want to see is, can astrology tell us where their star power comes from? Is there something in astrology that tells us why Aretha Franklin or Janis Joplin or Jimi Hendrix have this charisma, this talent, and that star power? And so what I did is I said, let's look at charts with only AA accuracy. That means the time is from a birth record or a birth certificate. And I made a list of people who looked interesting to me. This is subjective. Out of a list of hundreds and hundreds of musicians with AA data, I just started listing ones that look interesting. I'm not the world's greatest expert in rock music, but most of us recognize these names. And I saw Elvis Presley. Well, he's a big deal. I recognize Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, Bob Dylan, Donovan, these two guys from the group the Bee Gees, Paul Simon, etc. So all these people, Paula Abdul, even Justin Timberlake, Dionne Warwick, some of these names pop out at you and have more impact than others. So first I just listed any name that looked pretty interesting as a person who's you might say a mover and shaker, or made an interesting contribution, interesting personality. And your list would be different. You might, include Bonnie Raitt or whoever. There's all kinds of interesting people here. But I decided to pick out about a dozen or so. Why a dozen? Because that's a lot of charts to analyze. And you have to be practical when you do research. I don't have time, or I don't want to make time to analyze every single one of these charts. So you have to fit it into your schedule. This is true in academic research as well. There's limitations on your time, money, and resources. So I wanted to see, is there something in common or consistent with some of the powerful people? So first I made this list, and then in yellow bold here, I have the ones that I picked out. So it's subjective, just names that look impressive to me, but here's why the study is important and more important than anecdotal evidence. Once I pick out the names, I picked out these 13 people that looked interesting to me as movers and shakers, or something interesting about them. Now I must interpret all 13 charts. I can't say, oh, well, gee, Jim Morrison's chart just doesn't make any sense. I won't show that. It's not a good teaching example. I don't know what to do with it. I'm going to commit myself to these 13 charts and see if I can find something that explains all of them. So this is model building. It's a little more rigorous than just randomly selecting charts that happen to work for us. It's not extremely rigorous, a big step forward from anecdotal evidence, but it's early stages of model building. Even though astrology has been around for thousands of years, in a sense we're at the beginning of trying to build solid models that really explain behavior. Now, how did I get these charts? Suppose you want to do similar research. How are you going to create this list and pick out the charts you want to study? Where did I get this from? Where did I find the time and energy to do it? Well, I'm going to show you how. That's the first thing I'm going to show you, is how I found this data. Now, if you're by the way, if you're just curious about Elvis Presley's chart or Buddy Holly's chart or whoever, you can just go to those videos and watch it. But for those who are interested more in, also interested in how this study is done, I'm going to show you how I found the data. What I did is I used the Series 2.0 software, and I go into this, which we're looking at here. I go into the data entry screen. I'll say new, add new chart, and I click on this get group of charts. This is a wonderful feature that enables me to find this list of charts. Click on this, and then I click on change category because I want musicians. I'm going to use this change category button. I'm going to use this accuracy button, which is going to allow me to look at only AA data, and I'm going to use a range of charts because I'm interested in contemporary musicians. If somebody's born in the 1700s or 1800s, I know I don't want their charts. There's another feature here, notes, which is that if we had a note in the notes field for each person that was consistent, I could use that. But right now, we'll see that we don't. So I'm just going to use these features, change category, accuracy, and range of data, and that will narrow me down to some group of charts, and then I'm going to look through it and see which ones I want to use. So first, let's change the category. Click on change category, click on this menu item, select a category, and then you have all these categories, and here's musicians. Now, do I want all musicians, just piano players, violin players, guitar players, singers? Well, let's just select all to be safe, because some are guitarists, some are singers, etc. I'll select all, click OK. Okay, so now I've got all musicians, and there are a lot. Right now it's limiting to 1,000. I can click on this checkbox to see more than 1,000, but there's over 1,000 charts of musicians, but I only want AA data. So I'm going to click here, accuracy any, only charts selected below, AA. I'm going quickly. If you're wanting to follow this, you can pause your video and watch that more carefully if you have the software, and you can do it while I explain it, and slow this down and with the pause and use that. So now I've got only accuracy AA. I still have over 1,000 charts. Now I'm going to restrict my range of, I can get birth charts from a date, before a date, or within a range. And let's do, say, 1940, because some of the early musicians might have been born in the 40s, to say 1985. That will eliminate some of the real younger, newer people. You can do whatever you want. And I'll click on Apply Year. And now I'm down to 707 musicians. So there are 707 musicians with AA data. Isn't this fantastic? We have this information available to us. What would be even better is if I could say, give me the rock musicians only. And right now we really can't do that because we haven't categorized to that level. We've got over 85,000 charts. So software is always never-ending process. Every time you add a feature, there's more that can be done. I'm one of the developers of this program, that's why I say, we. So, we're always working on it and improving it. But what I can do is I can go down, I can say, Paul Abdul. She looks interesting. And I wrote her name down. We go back to the PowerPoint. I think she was one of the people. I've got these kind of randomly listed here. There she is, Paul Abdul. So I thought, well, she's kind of interesting. At least I know who she is. I'm not the greatest expert in modern music. There's Tori Amos. I know who she is. I think she's very interesting. I wrote her name down. Joan Baez. So you just go down, and this takes some time. This takes a little bit of time. It's the state of the art. What's wonderful is that we have over 85,000 charts. We have over 700 charts of people with AA data born during this time range. That's the level we've gotten to. But just to have this data collected and organized is a big step. Here's, who did I just see? I don't know. I'm talking and reading at the same time here, confusing myself. Okay, so you scroll down, you see what you want. There's I'm seeing lots of names of people I recognize. Karen Carpenter, Richard Carpenter. I think it wasn't Richard Carpenter, her brother, but anyway, or fellow musician. Anyway, you go through this list. Let's go down to the D's. We should see, there's John Denver. Okay, so you got the idea. And then I would see Bob Dylan and Donovan, and those were some of the names that I used. There's Donovan. Anyway, and then I check them. I just check them if they look interesting. I can read them in or make a note about that I'm interested in them, and I made this list. So that's how I did it. I'm just going to cancel out of here and get back to the screen, get out of the data entry screen. So that's how I got this list. And then I picked out the ones that are interesting, and now the fun begins. The fun begins. Here's that list of people. First of all, I kind of categorized them. I've got Grace Slick. If you don't know who she is, she was a lead singer of some groups called Jefferson Airplane and so on. Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix. They're kind of heavy rock sort of people. We've got singers like Aretha Franklin, Janis Joplin. So I just looked at what kind of data I have. 2 early rock musicians, Elvis Presley, Buddy Holly. And in doing my research, when I was doing Jim Morrison, I got curious about his organ player, Ray Manzarek, because some of those really popular songs by Jim Morrison feature that organ playing, like in Light My Fire. There's an organ break, and I thought they might have a strong synastry, and they do. So I threw his chart in there, included his chart when I discussed Jim Morrison. He has only A data. All the rest are AA data. And in the future, we can do, other musicians. So I just selected these out to see if we could find out what's in all of these charts. And I've already explained this. This is not as rigorous as if we used objective criteria, but it is a big step above using just random anecdotal charts that happen to fit our theory. So here's where the fun begins. Do these incredibly powerful musicians that had such a big influence on millions of people, do they have something exciting in their charts? Aretha Franklin's an exciting singer. You might expect something to pop out in her chart, not just the same old boring sorts of charts. Maybe she has an exact square. When you see an exact square in the chart, like a planet at 10 Aries 15 and another at 10 Capricorn 15. Do these musicians have something that really stands out, that's striking, dynamic, powerful? This is what I wanted to know. And this is why this is research, because we're really going to see. We're not going to fake it. We're going to see, can we find something? So it's interesting. And what we're going to see in this bottom paragraph, I say, will these charismatic and intense people have something extreme in their birth charts? Yes. We're going to see that they do. Will they have something in common that indicates rock and roll? And we're going to see a yes to that. But what we're going to find, because I'm using this vibrational astrology model, is it's in these vibrational patterns, or you could call them harmonic patterns, and we'll be looking at these harmonic charts, and it is really, wait till you see this. As I go through each one of these charts in those separate tutorial videos on each one of these musicians, it's pretty amazing the similarity and consistency of these extraordinary patterns in their charts. Very, very exciting. Are we proving something? No, we're building a model. We're building a model with something better than just anecdotal evidence. We've picked out some charts. We look to see if there's something that makes sense and consistent, and we find that there is. So what do they have? I'll tell you what it is they have in their charts. They're all going to have strong Venus-Uranus aspects. Now, I don't think all musicians, I don't even think all rock and roll musicians are going to have conspicuous Venus-Uranus, but it is more common with people who play heavy rock or a dance kind of music, because Venus-Uranus, I think, is related to the rhythm and the excitement and the spontaneity. So all 13 of these musicians, they do have the conspicuous Venus-Uranus aspects. And conspicuous where? They're not necessarily conjunct or square or trine, the usual kinds of things. They show up in these vibrational patterns. And the vibrational patterns that show up are 11, 5, and 55. There are a few musicians who have other harmonics. We're going to see Donovan, for example, is 33rd harmonic, and 66, which is 11 times 3. The songwriters have 11 times 5. The people like Carole King, Bob Dylan have huge 55th harmonic patterns. Very, very interesting. So 11, 5, and 55 are the most common. Why 11? The reason I think 11 shows up is because the 11th harmonic, which means 1/11th of a circle, 2/11ths of a circle, 3/11ths of a circle, and so on, the 11th harmonic is restless. It won't sit still. So what do you do if you're restless and you can't sit still? Music is good outlet. Why music? Because music is dynamic. It's always moving. You can say music is restless. So people who need to keep moving and can't, get fidgety if they're just sitting there looking at something still, the music is a dynamic form. And then, of course, Uranus is exciting. So when you get Venus-Uranus in 11th harmonic, now you've got some real excitement going on. And we're going to see a lot of the rock musicians have exactly that in their charts. And why 5th? Well, 5th is playful. It likes to play with things, likes to experiment with things, likes to see what will happen if you mix things together in different ways. And when you play around with things, that leads to interesting results, what you could call creative. So we'll see Venus-Uranus in 5th, 11th, and for the very creative musicians, also 55. Now, what also happens with a lot of the musicians is Pluto gets involved in this. It's not just Venus and Uranus, it's a pattern, 3, 4, 5 planets. And one of the planets that combines with Venus and Uranus is typically Pluto, which is what you would expect for the charisma, the dynamism, the intensity of these rock musicians. So this is, I think, really exciting. We're seeing these vibrational patterns that we expect to find in the charts of these charismatic, intense musicians. And also, one more thing about this 11th harmonic, if it sounds like I'm really, really out there fishing for something exotic, David, give me a break, 11th harmonic, I don't think so. Well, back in 2007, I did a study on the data collected by Mikel and Francoise Gauquelin. And I found that the 11th harmonic showed up in musicians more than other vocations. And there's a paper about this at astrosoftware.com/discovery.htm. And here it is. Here's the website page. It's a very long article. Look how long it is with all these technical details and graphs, and there's statistics. It's a pretty heavy kind of paper. It's what we call exploratory research. But if we scroll down to the bottom, let's see, to the conclusions section, if I can find again, there it is. The most important, reading from this paper, the most important conclusion of this research is that astrological influences correlate with success in various professions. And here they are. With Sun-Saturn appears to have a lot to do with your talent, your profession. We often think of Saturn as the bad guy, the big bad malefic. Well, Saturn gives focus. It shows what's important to you. And it ends up in these harmonic patterns. Saturn is very, very important. A lot of things are important. But Sun-Saturn has a lot to do with where you, what you give attention to, what you apply yourself to, what's important to you, and what you can have a lasting commitment to. And the scientists have Sun and Saturn in harmonics 14 and 28, more than the other professions, which I'm not going to go into that, but it makes sense. Painters, as we expect, it's a creative area. They have 5 base harmonics, 10, 20, 40. When you double the number, you basically have the same vibration. And here are the musicians. They have these planets, these planet pairs, and there's the Sun-Saturn, in 11, 22, 44. And actors, 17 or 34, which, when you study vibrational astrology, this is really incredible, because it really, really makes perfect sense, even though to most astrologers it may sound wild and crazy and way out there. Within the context of vibrational astrology, this is really exciting, because it's what we expect to see. All right, so we have a history going back to 2007 of using this idea of 11th harmonic with musicians, and here that was a more formal, quantitative kind of study of an exploratory kind, and now in this model building where we're just going to look at charts of these charismatic musicians and see more of an intuitive, interpretive sense, using our content expertise as astrologers, and see if it really works, we find that it does. So more evidence that this works, and what's really exciting is we get to look at these charts of whether it's Elvis Presley or Tori Amos or whoever it is, and see the magic in their charts that made them who they are. So to summarize, what happens in these 13 charts that we looked at is we're going to see Venus and Uranus, etc., with other planets, combining together in 11th harmonic patterns, not just two planets. There'll be 3, 4, 5 planets sometimes. And they're 1/11s, 2/11s, 3/11s, 4/11s, or 5/11s of an aspect. This is unstable, dynamic, moving, yearning for something new. When you put Venus and Uranus in 11th harmonic, wow, you've got an electric storm going on. You're going to shake the room. If you're a student of astrology, you can feel this. Venus and Uranus in this electric harmonic, wow. And we're going to see this show up repeatedly in these dynamic musicians. And for playfulness and creativity, you just love to play music, you love to dance. It's not necessarily as intense and electrical and unstable as 11, but if you say you have a child, and that child has Venus and Uranus in 5th harmonic, that child needs to play music or dance. Just those two planets alone. You start putting in a third, a fourth planet in a 5th harmonic with Venus and Uranus, the person has this, just wants to dance, play music, and celebrate the dance of life. I mean, we all want to celebrate the dance of life, but if you have Venus and Uranus in 5th harmonic, you've got to do it every day. It becomes a big theme. And with the 55th harmonic, we're going to see that it makes you very creative and clever. Innovations. So how do those innovations show up? Songwriters. How do these people come up with these songs that just pop in their heads? They get these inspirations. 55th harmonic. If you got that 55th harmonic, you got this creative, dynamic thing where things just flow for you, and they can come into your mind. And if you develop the skills and talents necessary, Carole King knows how to play piano. She studied music theory, but she's got this 55th harmonic thing going on. And boom, song after song after song. Even arranging music, new styles, all of these creative uses, creative arrangements of music. Very, very often 55th. Now 35th is interesting. 35th, which is 5 times 7, it gives expertise. We're going to see that some of these musicians, they're not just rock out, wild, maniac, charismatic people. They practice. They have the same kind of skills, the same kind of focus and concentration and desire for mastery that a classical musician would have. So 35th gives the desire to practice, to get expertise, to become more perfect. It's thoughtful, it's more introverted. So some of the musicians who have excellent technique, thoughtfulness, maturity are going to have 35th. So you're going to get variations with different musicians depending on their style, depending on how they function. You're going to get some different things. You don't have to have 35 to be a star rock musician, but if you do, that rock music is part of an expression of your desire to and your ability to develop a high level of expertise. Now, 33rd and 66th, as you might imagine, if you're an astrologer, 11 times 3, 11 times 6, you get flowing, light music. We're going to see this shows up with Donovan. That light, well, your love like heaven, this light, flowing feeling, you'll get that sometimes with the 33rd, 66th harmonic. And less common, you'll see some other things. 41st harmonic shows up. This is a very advanced, well, it's not complicated, but But one idea in vibrational astrology is that there's a 30 rhythm to prime numbers, and prime numbers are fundamental in vibrational astrology. So 41 minus 30 is 11. So the 41st harmonic has some of the qualities of 11, of being moving, and it's very talented, very sensitive 11th harmonic feeling to this 41st harmonic. We'll see this show up in a few cases. Most noticeable example is Elvis Presley, actually. So we'll see that 41st shows up with people who love to explore music, different musical genres or histories. And what Elvis did is he studied some of the folk music, the African American blues tradition. He got inspired by it and basically converted it into this kind of rock and roll and moved it into a larger arena, but inspired by that. But he loved music, and kept performing. So anyway, 41st harmonic will show up just like 11th, and it's a Venus-Uranus-Pluto pattern, as we would expect, and that's why it has that quality to it. And sometimes just plain old octaves of 8. The octaves of 8, 8th harmonic, your squares, which is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. Semi-squares is less than quadrats. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 times 2 is 32. These are the driving basic forces in your life, and they will often show up as well, because they're just important in general. And then always shows up, these are less common, 41st and 8th. This is what's most common. The 11-based harmonics show up, 11 and 5-based harmonics are what show up the most often. And what's probably the most exciting is that you will feel the character of that person, the specific quality of Aretha Franklin, etc. I think is pretty clear and obvious when you see how these patterns show up in each of their charts. Okay, I think that's my last slide. It is. All right, let's go. If you're ready, you can continue with the next lesson. I've got a link to it here. Also, you can, as I said before, you can replay this tutorial video and just go to the beginning to watch the next video. Next lesson, Aretha Franklin. I've covered all the theory, the background, how this research was done. Let's look at these charts. Very exciting. I'm starting with Aretha Franklin really for tutorial purposes. I'm going to start with the charts that are the most obvious and clear examples of these patterns. And then as we advance in these lessons, we'll see how they can get more intricate, more sophisticated, more variations, more subtleties that are involved. So we'll start off with Aretha because hers is clear and straightforward example of how these patterns work. Okay, my friends, thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.